Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, Magnet Warrior. There was more to the top cut for YCSJ than we expected. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more content. So Dark Magician, this was not something that I really expected to be performing very well out here, but surprisingly enough, you know, when you get access to the actually interesting stuff that the Dark Magician deck is supposed to be doing, it does kind of feel like this deck is quite powerful, especially when you can Primite, Roar, Beam out, you know, the basic pieces. You have the Dark Magical Circles to do excavations and form up, you know, interruptions. And also to top things off, I mean, just kind of feels like this deck overall has a decent amount of consistency, especially when you're, you know, actually like a real deck for once in your life. So I gotta give them some credit. The fact that they were able to make top 64 with this and be able to show out a 5,000 duelist that Dark Magician Primite is actually a real meta contender was definitely not on my initial bingo sheet to see. So amazing. Next up here, we have Blue Eyes, White Primite. Yet another concept of how the Primite package basically made Dark Magician and Blue Eyes both competitively viable challengers within the scope of the meta. Now, once again, I mean, you're doing the same thing. You're using big old Primite stuff, but the Dark Magician list was a little bit more reliant on this, at least having the extra Primite cards in it, you know, where you have the ability to roar out the extra pieces. Blue Eyes has always been very minimalistic in that regard, but to be fair, you know, Blue Eyes never really got a decent amount of support. It was just, hey, you know, here's some Blue Eyes cards, you know, we'll go ahead and give you a structure deck on top of it, and you're going to have to just be happy with that in terms of your components, and you kind of go like this, mission accomplished, and you've got your, you're off to the races, basically. It makes sense, fundamentally, for how these decks have worked. Now, Magnet Warriors have been really cool, man. I actually have seen so many lists playing this, but I think a lot of the success has got to do with just being able to pivot into Fiendsmith. I want to be like, yes, Magnet Warrior's performing well, but the caveat here is, unfortunately, you know, you're having to do some interesting things. Now, you are seeing that we are playing the giant Magnet Warrior fusion down here. I am ecstatic that of all things that, you know, this list was trying to do, that we actually have a successful run for Berserkion actually showing up. I mean, you think these cards were dead, but, you know, you were able to make it into top 64 out of all of these duelists. Even if, you know, you toss this up as a variance run or that sort of thing, I do think that this is kind of notable and actually kind of cool. Next up here, we actually have Heroes. I didn't expect anything too crazy out of Heroes, but I mean, you hit enough people with Dark Law, I mean, it's bound to stick, especially with a lot more of this meta kind of relying on their back row. You know, it might feel like maybe you're not hitting a lot of crazy notes, but I mean, you're in a format where your opponents have to make calls of their hand traps that they might not necessarily want to make. You know, if builds are cutting Nibiru's, okay, well, Heroes don't end on their most infamous end board. But in a situation like this, though, where, you know, you play the droplets, you got the board breakers, you got the Maxis to draw you further into, you know, getting all these hero pieces, you know, as long as you see all of the pieces that the standard hero build wants to go with, I think you're going to have an absolutely fantastic time, and I think that's worth noting, so good stuff. All right, next up here, we actually have some Radiant Typhoon. Now, I think this might be one of the most interesting Radiant Typhoon list, because this build is playing the Fallen and the Virtuous. So this is one of those cases where we can start flinging things out of the extra deck at the opponent, and we're suddenly getting spot removal options. Now, this list went even more chaotic and actually went with, you know, triple crown and triple droplet within the main deck. That's a lot of interruption. I think a lot more than the average duelist is going to want to have. So I got to give it to the Radiant Typhoon deck as a whole, man. You know, with all of the extra options that you're kind of tossing into this pile, I really do feel like you've got a menace on your hands. So I kind of am about that. It's really, really cool to see. Next up here. This is totally a variant of a deck that we'll never be able to play, but it's still really cool to check in and see, how the OCG has been performing with these sorts of lists, because Protoss is, no matter how you want to spin it, a very problematic card. And we've continued to see Protoss rearing his ugly head within the meta, and, I can't say that I'm not surprised to see Protoss actually still being one of those essentially broken things. And obviously this just turns into basically trying to be, a toolbox sort of strategy. I mean, you got the Phantom Knight stuff. It's just rank 3 turbo with a lot of extra bits and pieces along the way as you're kind of setting up. So I do actually appreciate while, you're looking at this build and you're like, oh, this seems really cool. Yes, it does seem very, very cool. I'm very happy to see that, people are trying out different challengers for the meta. All right. Ooh, we have Killer Tune for you. We got that new Hulk, and I really want to test it in this deck, but this deck just doesn't get to make those bodies the way that I want to. I do see that your extra deck, the only real new card that you got was the new Synchro Tuner monster, which basically generically allows you to step into, which is good, but you also do see the Synchro Oxel Stardust Dragon in here. Synchro Oxel is still one of those fine bells and whistles that you get to step into just to kind of have the extra pressure on your opponent. I know at this stage, if the OCG can cram Baron de Fleur into a deck, they are going to do it. And I respect them for doing that, honestly, because that's the best call the OCG can come up with. If you can slam it in there and control your opponent, you're absolutely wrong not to at this stage. I want as much advantage as I can get. Ooh, we have Primite for you with the Odeon package. Interesting. So I see that they are playing the Angel Trumpeter in here. I think having access to the Angel Trumpeter is good. But Holy Dominus Impulse, man. They chose to go with Maximum Dominus. And that's kind of a scary thought, honestly. I hadn't really thought about tossing in every single one of these things you can slam in, but I guess this makes the Odeon deck into something I guess players want to play. So I guess that's a win, right? If you are slamming 12 Dominus into your opponent, I dearly hope that you are getting some sort of win out of it, because that seems pretty strong. Also, extra deck looks pretty fine. Only 2 extra. I guess, man, it actually works out pretty well. Ooh, we have Vanquish though for you. So remember, Joe Cool is pretty much bullied in the OCG. They only get to play 1, and Izuna is also at 2. So to the extent in which you're playing what we would call a competent Vanquish Soul list is a little bit far and in between at this point. You're not going to be getting the most consistent results, but I mean, as long as Holy Sue is going to be something you'll be able to access, you'll be fine. I do see that this build is playing the triple impulse and the fire attack, because it kind of has to. You do not get any real concessions outside of, not having these, and you're just forced to have more fire targets for the deck. I mean, this is the reality of the situation. When you bonk Rosin on the face, and you go after the consistency for a deck, it's bound to happen, man. Decks might look very consistent, but they still have problems. Ooh, we've also got some Draco Tail for you. I do see that this build is chosen to build in the Fallen and the Virtuous. You do see the 2 branded of white, the new one. Card is absolutely bonkers. Being able to bring out an Incredible Ecclesia, toggle into an extra free body, and then have that body come back is really, really strong. And also, Draco Tail is not exactly in the greatest position in the OCG. They kind of bullied this deck very, very hard during the last Forbidden and Limited list. So, unfortunately, it's had to take a little bit of a step back, for other things to progress. But what do you guys think about this? Please, comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here in day, guys. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.